Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in the Hamilton Mythology lectures. This is lecture number 10, part 6. The less important gods is what Hamilton will reference these two chapters. Chapter 20, Midas and others, and then chapter 21, brief myths arranged alphabetically, she will say. There are 38 total stories, right, that she will present in these two chapters. We obviously can't do all of them. We don't have the time. I'll only hit a few of them. Just to remind, if you haven't been following me at learnstrong.net, I definitely recommend that you go there. Go down that left-hand side, find the folder there, and then join the lectures that I've already given. Lecture 1, I give an intro lecture. Lecture 2, I talked about the gods and goddesses. Lecture 3, I did conversations on Demeter and Dionysius, Bacchus. Lecture 4, I did those cosmogonic myths, creation myths, as well as those earliest heroes. And Lecture 5, I did the 9 tales of lovers. In Lecture 6, I talked about Jason, the Argonauts, and 4 other great adventurers. In Lecture 7, those are those 4 great heroes that are before the Troy tale, Perseus, Theseus, Hercules, and Atalanta. And then in Lecture 8, which was really the kind of heart of all of the things that we talked about with Edith Hamilton's mythology, this is, of course, the treatment of the Troy tale. And then finally, at Lecture 9, that's the great families of mythology. Let me make the same suggestion I've made in all my prior comments, and that is I really recommend, and certainly in this lecture, because I'm not going to cover everything, that you annotate on your own and you outline all 38 of these very brief stories. Working with the 3 levels of reading. Level 1, what does the text say? Level 2, what does the text mean? Here again we divide to A, themes, messages, to B, rhetoric, not what the writer says, but how it's said. And then finally at level 3 we answer the question, how can I relate to this text in some way? At 3A, relate to other texts I know and then to the world at large. And then finally at 3B, how can I relate to myself? Again, that's important because of our notion of learning theory in 303, where our understanding of learning is that ability to connect new information to old information in meaningful ways. Now our focus in these stories will be one main idea or one main message that we can somehow relate to. Let's go ahead now and turn to chapter 20, Midas and others as it's referred to. Midas, the king of Phyrecia, and that is the land of roses. Our story begins with the old man Silenus, who is always drunk because he is the follower of Bacchus, Dionysius, the god of wine and revelry, and he ends up laying in the field of roses drunk, and he's found, and they dress him up and they bring him to King Midas, and Midas entertains him for 10 days before returning him to Bacchus. And Bacchus says, I'm so grateful that you returned my greatest and favorite follower. I will offer you any one wish. Now we can jump immediately, can't we, to 3A, and we can put down, this is the famous motif of you can have one and only one wish. Now obviously we saw this in earlier, like for example the story of Photon as well, where his father gave him one wish. Here Midas is given one wish by Bacchus, and without even thinking about it, and for your notes let's write this down, Midas always is going to kind of represent that really impulsive, dare we say it, stupid kind of individual who doesn't even think. Midas's very first comment out of his mouth is, I get one wish, this is my wish. Everything I touch turns to gold. And Bacchus is like, all right, man, that's what you want, that's what you get. And sure enough, everything he touches turns to gold, which means he immediately becomes a multi-billionaire, but it also means that when he touches his food, it turns to gold and he has nothing to eat. And when he tries to drink, it turns to gold and he has nothing to drink. And of course, he begins to starve to death. He goes back to Bacchus. He says, my wish is ruining my life. Think about the importance. I mean, these Greeks are brilliant, right? Think about, you may have a wish and it may come true, and then and only then do you discover, oh, this was like the worst thing that I could have ever wished for. Do you think it's possible in the history of the world, 1 or 2 people wished to have all kinds of money and power, and then when they finally got it, they realized it had destroyed them? This is the Midas story, right? And his life is, he's told, you got to go down to this river, Pactolus, and the Pactolus River there, wash in it, and this will explain why there's gold that was found in and among the sand at the side of the river. There's another story of Midas which is equally as funny. Again, Midas representing kind of a silly guy, not real smart. He's asked to judge a music contest between Apollo and Pan. Now there should be no question as to which one of these two will make the more beautiful music. Obviously the great god Apollo is going to make the more beautiful music. However, Midas, he chooses Pan. Apollo is torqued off about this. He says, I can't even believe you're that stupid that you appreciate beautiful music. And he makes his ears grow into donkey's ears, ass's ears, which of course Midas is then going to be embarrassed about, and he will try and hide these ears, but ultimately people come to discover that Midas has donkey ears. In other words, you get the joke here, right? If you can't hear great music and appreciate it, then you deserve to have donkey or ass's ears, right, that you wear. Of course, let's jot it down at 3a. We immediately think of Shakespeare's great play Midsummer Night's Dream, where Bottom is going to have his head turned into a donkey's head, right? You can, of course, appreciate the game Shakespeare's playing there. His name in the play is Bottom, and he's turned into an ass's head. For those of you that don't know the play Midsummer Night's Dream, I really hope that you'll look it up. We've given lectures as well on LearnStrong.net of that play, right? Okay, let's turn to another one. This is an interesting little story. Asclepius, the son of Apollo and Cronus, and he's raised by Charon in Hades, and he becomes a great healer. And snakes have much to do with the sacred rites that are a part of this healing, which is why sometimes when you see medicine, you will sometimes see snakes involved, okay, and the idea of intertwining snakes even. Let's go to our next story. The Danaides. These are 49 women who are forced to marry. They don't want to marry. And they all make a pact. There's actually 50 of them, but one decides not to do this. That the night of their wedding, after they have made love to their husbands and their husbands are asleep, they will kill them. In other words, we didn't want to get married. You made us get married. Fine. We will jack our husbands. In Hades, their punishment, and this is of course what makes the Danaides so famous, their punishment forever is they have to pick up a jar, go down to the river, fill it up with water and walk back with it. But the jar has holes in the bottom that will leak. You can kind of see the message here is sometimes you have to pay for an action, right? Even if you felt like that action was something that you were kind of obliged to do, it was okay. Let's go to the next one. Stories. And again, I'm just picking randomly here some stories. Well, not totally random. I'm giving you some of the most famous. This is the story of Glaucus and Scylla. It's kind of famous. Glaucus is a very interesting guy. He's fishing. We do this a lot out here. He's fishing. He catches a bunch of fish, goes into the grass. He's putting them there. All of a sudden, the fish jump up and jump back into the water again after he killed the fish. And he's like, whoa, whoa, what's up with this grass? He eats some of the grass, and he immediately starts to transform and change. He jumps into the water, and he becomes half man, half fish. And that's what he is, right? Kind of like a merman, we might say, right? He sees the beautiful Scylla, and he loves her. And he wants for her to be his girl. But Scylla's like, no. So Glaucus will go to the witch, Circe. And the witch Circe is in love with Glaucus. And she takes out her anger, not on him, but on Scylla, this drop-dead gorgeous girl, and turns her into a terrible monster who has multiple heads snakes with the heads like dogs. Well, of course, we know that about Scylla and the other monster, Charybdis, in the Odyssey. And of course the message here is sometimes the innocent are punished. I would write that one down. This seems to be central to a lot of our stories, doesn't it? That it doesn't matter. Scylla was a beautiful innocent girl. It doesn't matter. Sometimes the innocent are punished. We move on to chapter 21 and the brief myths that will be arranged in alphabetical order. We'll only do a few of these as well. And our key here will be our focus on the relationship of these stories to our own time. How about this one? Arachne, a simple peasant girl who's great at weaving, gets involved in a contest with the great goddess Minerva, and she is equal to her in weaving. Minerva is so upset by this that she changes her into a spider, which is of course Arachne, is the spider. So anytime that you see a spider's web, you're supposed to think, of course, about the whole story of what it means to try and challenge a god with your talent. Another way to say this is, sometimes talent can be a curse as much as a blessing. I see this sometimes in students who are really gifted in a number of areas, but then when they go away to college, they have to figure out what they're going to major in, and they're not actually sure which one to pick because they're gifted in several things. Sometimes talent is a curse. Another story. This is the story of Tithonus. Aurora asks Zeus to make him immortal, but forgot to ask that he would be immortal but young. So Tithonus is this famous character, famous motif, where he can't die. All he can do is just continue to age and get very, very old. The message here obviously is, be careful what you wish for. Our next story, Whitey. Whitey loved the sun god, right? He said, not interested. She said, no, you don't understand. I'm totally obsessed with you. All I will do for the rest of my life is to look at you. And so the sun god turns her into a sunflower, which is why, of course, all sunflowers' heads do what? Turn towards the sun. This is an interesting idea. Jot this one down. How about this one? We have a tendency to become, in some ways, the thing we love, the thing we're obsessed by, the thing we do over and over again. What a fascinating idea. Is it true that if I spend all my time playing a certain video game, that I will begin to think of myself in some way as an extension of one of the people in that game? Do you think that's ever happened as a possibility? It's an interesting idea. Finally, we'll tell about the story of poor Sisyphus. Sisyphus is the king of Corinth. He makes Zeus mad. He is sent to Hades where he is punished. His punishment, because Sisyphus is very strong, his punishment is this huge boulder, and there's a hill. He is told, you will be free from your punishment when you get the rock up the hill. And Sisyphus is like, oh, I know I can do this. And so he pushes the rock, and he works, and he works, and he works, and he gets it right to the top of the hill, and then he slips. His foot slips. Falls, the rock rolls over him, all the way back down. Down the hill he goes. This time I'll do it. Push, 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 all the way up, almost to the top. Rock again rolls back down over him. The myth of Sisyphus is, of course, a way for us to talk about what it's like when you have a task you're supposed to do and you never can quite accomplish it. Jot down in your notes, when was the last time you had a task? Some of you will say, this seems like the myth of all myths for high school, where it seems like it's an impossible task to finally finish it. The myth of Sisyphus. Well, this concludes our study of Greek mythology. Hamilton's Mythology, by the way, does end with a section on Norse myth that I definitely recommend to you. I'm just not going to talk about it here with you. I hope that you enjoy the study of these stories and the using of these stories to deepen your study, your appreciation of Western literature. Keep Hamilton's Mythology close by. When you stumble across a story where one of these myths is referenced, you may not remember it entirely, but you can always go to Hamilton's Mythology to help you begin to remember the stories again. I hope that my telling of a few of these stories has piqued your interest to maybe want to go and to take a look at a few of these stories. I thank you for being with me, and I thank you for your energy in sharing these stories with me. Thank you.